Hi, my name is Sruti. I am an author and spiritual teacher who talks and writes about my experience of spiritual awakening in times of chronic pain and illness. If you'd like to watch a more in-depth video about my personal experience of awakening, you can head over to Buddha at the Gas Pump on YouTube and type my name. Today, I want to talk about something a little bit different, which is how our relationship to pain can influence broader societal behavior. Before I do, I want to briefly describe what I've been dealing with for the past 6 years. Here is a low-tech version of showing you my face before and after I had an allergic reaction to an ear piercing in my right ear that caused puffiness, swelling, redness, ulcers, and a sensation of burning hot fire on my skin. Obviously, this was extremely painful and extremely difficult to deal with. And as you can see, over the past 6 years, while there is still some pinkness, redness, and puffiness, the condition is much better due to medications I was given after traveling across the country to see many different doctors at many different institutions. Although I previously wrote about my experience with interstitial cystitis, I did not write about how exactly that came about, which is the same way that the ear piercing happened. An allergic reaction caused an infection which triggered an autoimmune inflammatory response that my body could not control. 20 years ago, this happened to me long before the ear piercing when I took a medication called Bactrim that I should not have been taking at a time I should not have been taking it, when I did not have a UTI, but my doctor prescribed it anyway. The medication was called Bactrim. It is a sulfa medication that I'm allergic to, and it caused an inflammatory condition called interstitial cystitis that I've been struggling with long before this current issue, which is most commonly called erythromelalgia. So, due to the medications I was given because of my face, my interstitial cystitis is now 80% better, and I view the ear piercing as a bit of a blessing rather than a tragedy. Due to the ear piercing and due to the extreme transformation of my face, I was put on high-level medications I did not have access to before, and was also granted disability, which I also was not considered for before this incident. From a feminist perspective, it is hard not to see that I've been denied medication even when I was in horrible pain, all the way until the condition affected my face. And once it affected my face and it became visible to everyone that there was a dramatic suffering going on, that was when doctors finally believed that I was suffering and gave me the medications I needed. This is a common feminist problem, which is viewing a woman as an object rather than as a human being. Just seeing the outside of a woman for how she looks, rather than looking inside of the person, listening to what the woman has to say, and seeing her as equal to yourself. In feminism, this is called the other. Women commonly are made to feel as though they are the other, which means that they are an object outside of human experience, an object upon which they can be acted upon, and an object of course, abuse and violence. And that is what I want to talk about today. Originally, when I spoke about my experience awakening in pain, I simply talked about it from the perspective of illness. But today, I want to talk about it and how it relates to feminism, feminist theory, and society at large. In my experience in pain, especially times when I've been absolutely rolling on the floor, facing unconsciousness, I've watched as all of the layers of experience have vanished in front of me. The mind vanishes, feelings vanish, even your body begins to vanish as your consciousness starts to shut down. Your breathing vanishes, and the last thing to go is your eyesight. And you, The one remaining to know all of these things that are vanishing, the one who cannot vanish, is what remains. And that is your deepest, innermost self, the self that never dies, the self that is your connection to God and actually is the source of God within you. This is what people might call the source of consciousness, the power of now, enlightenment, which is a word I absolutely hate. And also you could use the word God, you could use the word the universe, the self, whatever word you want to use. The one that cannot leave you, the one behind your eyesight, the one who watches each layer of experience vanish and yet cannot vanish, is never harmed, never feels pain, is never hurt. That is the key golden nugget of why we experience pain in our lives. Not so we can endlessly experience pain. In fact, by finding this source within yourself, I have found that we suffer far too much pain, unnecessary pain, and pain that is man-made, much like poverty is man-made. And the way we can see this clearly is by finding out what pain really is used for in our lives, that pain really is a tool simply to find God and peace and consciousness and the source of rest and the source of God within you. Once we're clear on this, then this is where our relationship to pain begins to transform and where this can transform our behavior in society. Let's go back to Adam and Eve. Now, even if you don't believe in Adam and Eve, this is a myth that has permeated the human consciousness for as long as we can remember. And in this myth, we see a man named Adam blame a woman named Eve for the source of pain, death, suffering, illness, all of the reasons that we experienced the fall from paradise, from Eden, all of those things in life that are uncomfortable. All of those things were blamed on Eve for eating from the tree of knowledge, because she was tempted by the snake, and so on and so forth. Basically, Eve discovers knowledge. She discovers death, pain, illness. Adam is terrified. He does not use pain to look within himself, to find the source of God, to realize that pain is not there to torture us, but simply as a tool to find our true selves. If Adam had known this, he would not have blamed Eve for all of the problems of the world. Unfortunately, from a feminist perspective, we find that women are often blamed for all of the problems of the world, thus further making them into what I mentioned before, the other. And this is because in order to place blame upon someone or something, you must make that thing or that person into an object upon which to place the blame. Instead of doing a more active activity rather than the passive activity of simply placing blame. An active activity would be taking responsibility, working through it, finding the source of God within you. Instead of doing all of those things, Adam takes the easy route, passively blames Eve, and makes her into an object, a scapegoat. And this is the source of what we call Scapegoat Society. You can see Scapegoat Society every time you open a newspaper. You can see it in the news. You can see it now in the political sphere. You can see it absolutely everywhere, which is when something is wrong, when something is bad, when something is uncomfortable. The blame is placed upon another person, another country, another race, and quite often upon women at large or a specific woman, thus making that person, that thing, that group of people, that woman into an object that you can control, manipulate, act violence upon, abuse, or put into a hierarchy We often see in patriarchy the common practice of placing groups of people, or women, or individuals, into a ladder, a hierarchy of importance, a hierarchy of good and bad. And this creates the patriarchal system where some people benefit and others do not. All of this comes from the practice of scapegoating. It comes from the practice of how we treat women, how we've treated Eve from the beginning of time, and as many feminists would say, how we treat Eve, how we treat women as objects. It creates the framework for how we oppress any group of people, any person, any part of society, anywhere on the globe. So what happened to women first, blaming Eve for problems, now happens to anyone, any person, any group we want to oppress. We place blame upon them. We make them into an object. As an object, we put them into a hierarchy. We make them worse than ourselves. We dehumanize them. We make it easy to enact abuse, violence, oppression, etc. Why is this so important? The very structure of society, the very practice of relating to our fellow human beings relies on blame. It relies on how we as humanity view pain and how we deal with pain. And if we only use pain to blame others, to make others into objects, we have created a society of oppression. We have also created what you would call rape culture. Rape culture is when women are objectified and when they become the objects of hate, violence, and sexual violence, specifically rape. Rape culture systematically makes women into the other, into an object that is outside of you that you can act any form of violence upon and forget the fact that inside of that woman is someone equal to you, an equal, living, breathing, feeling human being. And so actually the most direct link to rape is the link between how we each deal with pain, how especially men deal with pain, and whether we choose the path of blame or the path of inner self-discovery. Should we choose the path of blame, especially blaming women, we have now created the atmosphere, the culture, and the direct link to rape. Therefore, how we deal with pain will determine if the human species will survive or whether it will rape and abuse itself until we have all perished. Just to sound as dramatic as possible, this election is that very choice. The choice to go forward, where we create a society of equal human beings, or go backwards into blame, into fear, into rape, into objectification, to solidify the patriarchy, or to begin to break it down from the inside, not using force, but using the act of surrendering to pain, becoming vulnerable in pain, allowing it to break down our layers of illusion, and finding the true source of strength, and the true source of spirit, and the true source of God within us. This choice is profoundly, profoundly important. It will determine if women can step into our power coming into this new world, or if we go back to women's oppression, where we will continue the cycles of abuse, violence, and rape. Women are the ones who bring community, circular thinking, compassion, love, gentleness, all these things into the world that we so desperately need right now. What I've outlined sounds like a simple 1, 2, 3 connection, but the issues in the world are incredibly complex. We need women now more than ever to step into their feminine power, the divine feminine, to help solve these problems. And women cannot do it if we continue to be oppressed, if we continue to be blamed, if we continue to be objectified, and if we continue to be threatened by the fear of rape. It is profoundly important that men and women both decide which pathway we are going to take in times of pain. Are we going to use it to find the hidden value of not knowing, to break down the mind, to unlearn what we think we know, to find out who we really are inside, or to go back to the same tired old playbook of using pain to blame others? This is the framework of society we are looking at, and this is the choice we are faced with. Whether we go forward into a circular society of women's empowerment, or backward into a hierarchical society of objects placed above and below each other because of blame. The last thing I want to discuss is a little bit further into what might happen if we look inside of ourselves instead of blaming outward. If we look inside of ourselves, break down the layers of who we are, and discover the true source of ourselves, the one that sees eyesight, knows we are breathing, and is even aware that we are conscious, the one that has no gap between consciousness and unconsciousness. If that is what we find within ourselves, when we look out at the world, we begin to see that same source of ourselves in the eyes of others, especially in the eyes of women. If you look into the eyes of a woman and you see yourself, you have just resolved the problem of the other. That woman is no longer separate from you. She is no longer different. She is no longer divided. She is one with who you are. And when someone is one with who you are, it becomes very difficult to harm them. If you also look inside of yourself and realize the source of God is within you, if you feel that divinity in yourself and then look outside yourself and see that divinity in others, especially in women, it becomes very hard to harm someone who is divine, who is as divine as you. And that further supports the circular society in which we are all equals, in which we are all more than equals, we are one, and in which women are now brought back from being cast out as the other, from being divided into good and bad, Cinderella and evil stepmother, back to the wholeness of equality, of connection, and of oneness. In this upcoming election, in our current climate, take another look. However you decide to deal with pain in your life, whether you decide to read my book, The Hidden Value of Not Knowing, that discusses my personal solution and my personal experience to finding peace, God, my true self in times of pain. However you decide to do this, please decide to make a different decision than continuing to uphold Scapegoat Society. Look out in the news, see our leaders behaving poorly, creating this Scapegoat Society, and make another choice. Societal change begins at home with you. It begins with how we treat our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, our girlfriends, our friends, whomever you find in your life. Look at them and make another choice. Find out who you are, find out who they are, reimagine what pain could mean for you, reimagine it the way I've reimagined it, see things as they really are, and I promise you, your whole life will radically change, and we can all enter a new earth together. All of the problems that need solving cannot be solved from our old mindset, And I refuse to carry these broken societal behaviors into the new earth, into the new way of interacting, into our new equal society. In fact, it's impossible. The world was not designed for violence, and especially not designed for rape. God always imagined women as equals, always imagined that we would find the true source of ourselves and see each other as equals. In fact, if we continue along the other pathway, Scapegoat Society can only end in the destruction of the planet, of the climate, and of the human species. Please reimagine what pain means for you the way I have. Thank you for your time.